Good morning and welcome to Greece. My name's Andrew and I live here, and this video is all about my costs of living here, my essential costs, my non-essential costs, and most importantly this is an update because I did a video a year ago about my costs of living here, and this video therefore is really about what's changed, what's gone up, what's gone down, if anything, and also what hasn't changed at all. So I hope it's useful to you. Now, as a spoiler, last year I said that my essential costs of living in Greece were about €1,000 a month, and I think that's gone up quite significantly, about €150 a month. So I think now my essential costs are about €1,150 a month. Now that may not sound much in the grand scheme of things, particularly if you're from the US or the UK or Northern Europe or somewhere like that, but in real terms that is a 15% increase in costs, and I'm going to break it down in this video, and it's quite interesting because the things that have gone up are things that people are really going to feel and notice as well. The underlying rate of inflation in Greece is about 3% for the last year. But Andrew, you said your cost of living has risen 15%. Surely that's a big difference. Yes, it is, and it illustrates the fact that the macroeconomics here in Greece, the big numbers, do not represent the reality for the resident here in Greece, the average person on the ground. It's not great. Now, my wife and I own our properties here in Greece, so we're very lucky. We're not directly affected by changes in house prices, rents, etc. here. But where we are directly affected are energy costs. And I would say our electricity bill, for example, has gone up about 20% in the last year. We used to pay about €100 a month. We're now paying about €120 a month for our electricity bill. And we are cautious. Electricity prices in Greece have gone up 18.9% in the last year. Now, they're still relatively cheap compared to, say, the UK, where the market is particularly messed up. I was going to use another word, but let's just say messed up. Here in Greece, per kilowatt hour, you're paying about 17 cents. That's about 14.5 UK pence per kilowatt hour. Contrast that with the UK, you're paying 25.3 or something pence per kilowatt hour, almost 30 euro cents. So we're not quite half, but we're getting towards half the price of the UK. But it has still gone up 18.9%. We are paying €20 a month more for electricity. Now let's talk heating oil. Most people here use heating oil to heat their houses in the winter. Now down south here in the Peloponnese, it's not such an issue. We don't get cold winters anymore. We used to, but we don't nowadays. Up north in northern Greece, up in the mountains, it is a big issue. People use a lot of heating oil. I've heard of people using 1,600 litres in a winter to heat their houses. Heating oil here is €1.2 a litre. Now I only use about 60 litres a year. We're very efficient in that. So my total heating bill for a year is perhaps €100. But for people, if you're in the mountains, if you're in the north, you have problems and you're going to be using potentially 10 times that, maybe 1,000, maybe more euros a year in heating oil. And petrol. Petrol here has remained fairly consistent year on year. Last year it was about €1.7 a litre in the Peloponnese and around Athens, and it remains at about €1.7 a litre in the Peloponnese and around Athens. Again, it depends where you go. If you go to the islands, I was in the islands recently, you are going to be paying north of €2 a litre, because when you go to the islands, and particularly if you live in the islands, things are more expensive because you have to get them there. That brings me to food, definitely another essential. And I have to say it's been pretty horrific in the last year. There have been noticeable rises in the cost of our food and groceries, and I don't think it's going to slow down anytime soon. I think I quoted €500 a year for a food shop, monthly food shop for the two of us. I would say now, here in the Peloponnese, it's €600. And I would say if you lived in Athens, it's probably closer to €650 to €700 in Athens. I've noticed that in Athens, the prices in the same supermarkets are significantly inflated compared to the regions. Now you can go to the Laiki. This is the market that most towns and villages have once a week. Here in Nafplio, in Petrol or Astros, in Athens even, you have these Laikis. That is much cheaper. You buy the produce often direct from the farmer, or certainly on a much shorter supply chain, and you should get much better value. And you talk to the people selling the goods. If they like you, they'll sell you their better stock and they'll sell it to you cheaper. So the Laiki is a real option. But I think the prices now here in the Peloponnese were 500, now 600. And I want to give you a few numbers just to throw something into the mix. And I'm going to have to read these, I'm sorry. But fruit, produce, they've gone up 19.3% year on year. That is significant for a product that is grown here in Greece. Coffee, 16.8%. Okay, they don't grow coffee here, but 16.8%. Greece is a coffee culture. You really notice it here. Then we talk about fish. Plentiful fish here in Greece. Okay, The Argolithic Gulf here has been overfished, but there is lots of fish here in Greece, 7%. Meat, God, I notice it on the meat, 6.2%, and I would say beef has gone up an awful lot more than that. It's really expensive. Bakery, again, Greece loves its bakery, 5.4%. And olive oil, it did come down year on year, but it's gone up in the last month, 9.5%. The price of olive oil, an absolute staple here in Greece, is ridiculous. So groceries here in Greece are out of control. Now I come to mobile communications, mobile phones, internet, etc. And the reality is that has not changed in the last year. If anything, it's got slightly better. My wife pays 27 euros a month for her mobile phone. I think that's an awful lot of money for European standards. I think for North American standards, it's pretty low. But 27 euros a month, for all that, she gets 15 gigabytes of data. She gets unlimited calls, unlimited texts. And that is with a local provider. We have to have a local provider mobile SIM here for banking, etc. You probably do nowadays in most countries, but that hasn't changed year on year. I still use an O2 SIM from the UK. It costs me €8 a month and I get 25 gigabytes. I just redid it the other day. It's fantastic value. It puts into contrast the 27 euros a month my wife has to pay for our Greek SIM. But the reality is our mobile phone costs haven't changed year on year, and it's the same with internet. Actually, if anything, internet in Greece is getting slightly better. We pay 28 euros a month direct debit. For that, we get 50 down and 600 kilobits per second up. But that is a limitation of where we live rather than necessarily the options available. If you are in Athens, and we've just done the internet in Athens, you can pay 28 euros a month for full fibre to house. So we pay 28 euros a month, we get 300 up, and we get 100 megabits per second down. That's where I go to upload my videos if I have a chance now, because boy, it's a lot quicker than it is here in the Peloponnese. But internet, we're paying about 28 euros a month for a line, and it hasn't changed, along with mobile phones. Let's talk about insurance. Very exciting topic, I know. Is it essential? Yes, it absolutely is. We have a Mark 8 Golf, 4 years old here in Greece. We pay 28 euros a month for that. It hasn't gone up. We've paid 28 euros a month pretty consistently, if I'm honest with you, since we bought the car 4 years ago. We pay online. We use a company called Hellas Direct. I'm not recommending them at all, but the online phenomenon of insurance here has really developed in the last 5 years. Prior to that, everyone had to use brokers. Now, things like car insurance, you can do online, and it's relatively cheap here. And like the rest of Europe, you insure the car, not the driver. So you have parity. It doesn't matter if you're 25 or 65. You will pay the same dependent on the car. Also, because you're insuring the car, anyone can drive that car provided they have a valid license and they're of the legal age, etc., etc. So car insurance here, I still think is a pretty good deal. We also pay health insurance. Now, we've redone our health insurance in the last year. We have private health insurance here. I think it's pretty important. I have a video on healthcare. Have a look at that. But we used to pay about 100 euros a month. We redid our policy. We've upgraded the policy to include more hospitals, to be a slightly larger sum of money, etc. We pay 152 euros a month for that, and I still feel that's a pretty good deal. Now, you have to do that through a broker. Health insurance you still have to do through a broker, and 142 euros a month with Generali. All the big insurance companies in Greece will offer health insurance. They're quite restrictive. I'm going to do a video on healthcare and health insurance and stuff in Greece, so watch out for that. But what I would say is do it before you're 55. It's much more difficult to get private healthcare insurance in Greece after 55. And finally, I want to talk about fires, forest fires, house fires, and earthquakes here in Greece, because as you'll probably know from the television, they are a reality here. We're in a seismologically active zone. We get lots of summer fires here in Greece, and we insure our properties against fire. Now, we've just done the one in Athens. We've insured it for 86,400 euros rebuild value, and that has cost us 152 euros for the year, so about 12 euros a month, but we paid in a one-off fee. I think that's excellent value. That covers us for earthquakes, it covers us for fires, it covers us for trucks driving into the building, it covers us for subsidence, etc. I think it's essential. Now, you can debate till the cows come home whether hospitality, cafe life, restaurants, etc. is essential or not, but in my opinion it is, because you have to have a social life, you need to see your friends, you've got to go out and relax. It's part of living, and so I'm going to put it into essentials. And the government here says that hospitality prices have risen 6.5% since January this year. Now, I have to be honest, I haven't seen that. I think hospitality in Greece is under stress, but I think it offers fantastic value. We can eat out, have a reasonable Greek meal here in a decent restaurant for between 45 and 55 euros. That's for two of us, including some wine. Now, if you're going to get wine, don't get a bottle of wine. If you are going to get a bottle of wine, get a bottle of Greek wine, but ask for a carafe, miso kilo, half a kilo, or a kilo of wine, and you'll pay something between 3 and 5 euros for it, depending on the quality and where it comes from. It'll be barrel wine, but it's perfectly palatable, especially after the first glass. Again, likewise, avoid branded spirits. Branded spirits here, 8 to 12 euros per shot, depending on where you are drinking. And if you want to keep your bills down, don't drink spirits. But food prices here, particularly Greek and Italian food prices, very reasonable. And my wife and I probably spend between 200 and 300 euros a month on that. That's quite excessive, but obviously you can flex that depending on how your budget's going in a particular month. Likewise, coffee shops, absolute staple of Greek life here. Coffee shops, coffee should be €2.50 to €3.50, depending on what you're buying. Obviously, if you have a matcha latte with soya milk and sprinkles and everything else, you're going to be up at €6-7. But here in Greece, €2.50 to €3.50 in any decent coffee shop. Decent coffee here, an absolute essential of life in Greece. And again, I haven't seen it going up, but I do think that for the restaurants, for the tavernas, for the cafe owners here, the margins are being squeezed and it is becoming particularly tough. So if you have a chance to tip, I would tip at least 10%, maybe 15%. A couple of euros, doesn't hurt you, means everything to them. House prices in the last 9 months, since January 2025, have risen 6.6% across the country. And that is to ignore the regional variations. Athens, Kalamata, the Peloponnese are all shooting up, and this market has a long way to go. If you're thinking of coming here, retiring here, buying here, I wouldn't wait, because prices have been going up for the last several years, double-digit growth, and will continue to do so. It shows no sign of slowing. So let's talk about some of those numbers. If you want to buy a small, let's say 45 to 50 square metre apartment in Athens, built 1970, reasonable area, northern suburbs, Marousi, Halandri, somewhere like that, typical Greek residential area, you're going to be talking about at least 140, 150,000 euros. That's 2,800, 3,000 euros a square metre. The prices go up from there. If you go to Glyfada, some of you might be looking at Glyfada or Vouligmeni or somewhere, you can be spending typically 8, 10, 12, up to 25,000 euros a square metre. Now, I'm picking the top of the market here in Greece, but it's similar across Greece. Let's go down to Kalamata. If you want to buy an apartment on the seafront at the moment, and prices are rising there, you're looking at about 8,000 euros a square metre. If you want to go where a lot of the villas are being built, it's slightly out of Kalamata, it's up on the hill, it's very pleasant. You're talking about 5,000-6,000 euros a square metre for a villa up there. So prices are not cheap. Even around here in Nafplio, the prices here, probably your average price here is about 2,700 euros a square metre. Now, if you talk about rent, it's even worse. Rents in the last year have gone up 11.3%, and in the last 5 years, they've gone up over 40%. But rents in Athens have gone up. A year ago, I would have said they were 12 to 14 euros a square metre for a typical 45 to 50 square metre 1970s apartment in an average residential area in Athens, not Glyfada, somewhere like that. Now you're probably talking 14 to 15 euros a square metre per month. So if you want to rent around Marousi or Halandri, for example, 45 square metres, you're probably looking at 650 euros a month. And then on top of that, regardless of whether you own or rent, you have to pay the property tax, the ENFIA here in Greece. Now, this is one thing that, in my opinion, hasn't really changed in the last year and is relatively low for Europe. I pay about 250 euros a year on our property in Athens, which is 48 square metres, about the same on our property in the Peloponnese, which is north of 100 square metres. But if you're thinking about moving here, buying here, be very aware accommodation costs are going up. They're not expensive compared to the rest of Europe, and that's a problem in itself, I think, because it means they've got a long way to go. So we come to the first of my non-essential costs, clothing. Now, my wife would vehemently disagree with me on this. She would say very strongly that clothing is an absolute essential, particularly the amount she buys of it. But it will shock probably most of you to know that my wife buys my clothes. I'm really not very interested in it. So my reality is that I'm not absolutely up to date with clothing prices, but given on what my wife spends monthly on clothing, and I'm not going to tell you what that is because it's ridiculous, I suspect that clothing prices probably haven't changed much in the last year. I think it's quite a competitive market here across Europe. We have Zara, we have H&M, we have Marks and Spencer, etc. They're all in competition with one another. I think the market works and it keeps things a little bit cheaper. Plus you have options here. You can go high end in Athens, you can spend whatever you want. You can go, as I said, to H&M, Zara, Marks and Spencer's, etc. Spend middle of the road. Or you can go to the Likey, the market I mentioned with the food, and you can buy very cheap, non-fashionable, but perfectly functional clothes for dirt cheap. It's up to you what you wish to spend, but I don't think clothing prices here in Greece have changed significantly in the last year. Now, I think the same can be said for the high street, general household goods, homewares, electricals, TVs, etc. I don't think prices have gone up in the last year. They probably haven't gone down, but they certainly haven't gone up here in Greece. And I think across Europe, there's a fairly standard price. Now in Greece here, we have 24% VAT. That does affect things a little bit. For example, a MacBook Air, that's a good benchmark. It's like a McDonald's Big Mac, is 999 euros here. It's 849 in the UK. But account for 24% VAT, account for 15% exchange rate. Actually, it might be slightly cheaper here in real terms than it is in the UK. Certainly, the retailers aren't making as much margin on it. So I think that in general, the high street here is competitive and has remained so. Now, the last thing on my list, and definitely not essential, but perhaps very important to the foreigner in Greece, either a visitor or an expat such as myself, a resident foreigner, is service costs. These are things such as airline ticket prices, hotel prices and package holiday prices, and the fact is they've all gone up. Airline tickets in particular, they're getting hammered. They're an easy target obviously for tax, and I really notice it, I'll be honest with you. When I was dating my wife in 97, 98, I used to fly to Greece virtually every weekend from London, and if I was sensible, EasyJet, I don't think Ryanair existed at the time, but one of the budget airlines who were just starting out, it was 30 to 35 euros return for a weekend. It was ridiculous. Now, I'm very, very lucky if I can do it for 300 euros return. The prices now are ridiculous, and obviously they go up in July and August as demand peaks. Likewise, hotel costs. Hotels have gone up 5.7% year on year. Package holiday costs have gone up 6.4% year on year. Again, not surprising if you consider that I've talked about the fact that apparently food prices have gone up significantly, energy prices have gone up, flight prices have gone up. Of course these things have gone up, but as a foreigner who lives in Greece and does travel a bit, likes to book hotels and so on, these things matter to me. So there we go. I think maybe I've actually underestimated the increase in my essential costs. I said last year we were paying about €1,000 a month on our essential bills, and we were. I reckon maybe this year it was 1,150. I think it might be close to 1,200 euros a month, an increase of 20%. And there's not a lot I can do about that. That's the frustrating thing. You know, an extra 100 euros on our food bills, that's a big, big, big impact. Plus, for example, an extra 20% on energy costs. Do we choose to live comfortably in the summer, or do we sweat it out? And then all the other little things as well that I've talked about, they add up. And whilst, as I said, the headline rate of inflation in Greece is 3%, I think for the average person living here it's 15, maybe even 20%. What do? Do you pay more? Can you pay more? Because don't forget, everyone's getting squeezed. Minimum wage here is only 880 euros a month. Yes, it's gone up 50 euros this year, but it's still very, very small compared to the cost of living in Greece and the average across Europe. And businesses are getting squeezed as well. Can they put their prices up? Do they have to cut their margins? I've heard of summer businesses where they are paying people less than they were last year just in order to maintain the prices and get the customers through the door. I know of one business, last year they were paying their staff €6.50 an hour. This year it was €5 an hour minimum wage because they couldn't afford to do anything else. It's very tough for people here. My bills in the last year, 15 to 20% up. I've broken it down for you, and I don't see it getting any better. I think it's going to continue as a trend through into next year and perhaps beyond. But I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you found it interesting. I hope it's been useful to you, whether you live in Greece, whether you're thinking of moving to Greece, or just want to understand perhaps how your bills compare to mine. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, watch some of my other videos, and I look forward to doing more for you soon. Thank you very much.